Hi, my name's Alex Wellock, student number 130682337. Today I'm going to talk to you about my wire choir ensemble performance and how I came to write and perform the piece for the second year and second semester of the Bemis Contemporary Music Performance course. So for the task, I was required to create a 32-bar ensemble piece which needed to be played by 4 people and it needed to include both an A and B section. Before I actually started writing my piece, I decided to research the internet for different drum performances and to see how each individual player bounces off the others in their performance. And I also gathered these ideas and needed to find a way on how I can actually incorporate these ideas into my own performance. So in contrast to my last wire choir performance, I decided to add more elements of drums, such as a floor tom and the rims of the snare drums, instead of just using 4 snare drums with the snares on throughout the whole piece. This gave the piece more dynamic change and a bit more feel as well. So when I actually came to start writing my piece, I started with the A section, as you would in a normal pop song, which is pretty much the same as a verse section, and I felt that the piece needed to have a massive punch and impact in order to catch the attention of the listener straight away. So to do this, I used the dynamic such as which is known as forte, and I used crescendos on the floor tom and snare drum. And the dynamic forte means loud. Throughout the whole of the A section then, I use a mixture of groupings of 6, groupings of 5, triplets, and a rudiment known as a flam. Next I moved on to the B section, which in a normal pop song is the chorus section. And I changed the dynamics for this section. I changed the dynamics to piano, which means quiet. Then I went to mezzo forte, which means it gradually gets louder. And then finally I moved on to forte, which means loud. I did this in order to let the piece actually grow and have a bit of space to breathe and change dynamically. I also added the rims of the snare drums, and these played both quavers and flams on the offbeats. This was during bars 9 to 18 that I used these, and for the quavers I decided that the players would need to play these with just their right hand instead of just having singles played throughout the whole of this section. I also decided to use the floor tom again in this section, and I decided that the floor tom would play a 3-2 song clave, whilst the snare drums 1 and 3 played a 2-3 song clave over the top. I did this to slightly change the rhythm so that it's not just one straight rhythm all the way through. There's lots of offbeats, and it comes from it's inspired by a samba beat as well. In bar 20 then, I used a rundown of Swiss Army triplets, which was played on the rims of the snare drums, and I did this before going into the C section. So for the C section then, I created a drum solo, as I felt that the piece needed to have a lot of space and time to breathe, and I felt that as I was player 1 I should take control, and so I gave myself the task of performing the drum solo. The actual drum solo itself then consisted of doubles and also triple paradiddles, and like I said, the piece then there was more variation of parts, and the piece actually changed dynamically, as all the other players weren't playing at this point. It was just myself. After the C section then, the C section only lasted for 4 bars as well, and then straight after the C section I went back to the A section, as it's sort of like going into another verse. And for the first 3 bars of the repeated A section, I used a variation of the rudiments which are known as flam taps and also Swiss Army triplets. This then leads into a bar of groupings of 6, and also then a bar of groupings of 5. The last 2 bars then of the A section and the whole piece, it's a repeat of bars 1 and 2, which I felt that gave the piece a distinctive ending, so that then the listener would know that it's coming to the end of the actual piece. However, during practice of this wire choir performance, I felt that there were a few difficult parts for both myself and the other players in the performance, and I felt that I needed to change some of the parts in order to make it slightly easier, ready for the actual day of the performance. So for an example of this was my drum solo. I did add too many flams and Swiss Army triplets and a lot harder other harder rudiments. So I felt that I'm not going to keep this, as I know that I'm not going to be able to play it on the day. So I decided that I need to make it easier and simplify it more, and which then led me to actually just using a mixture of doubles and triple paradiddles. And if I was to do this task again, like I've already said, I would simplify it a lot more, but in this case I would add a hi-hat or a bass drum to actually play the crotchet pulse during the whole piece, to actually let the piece flow more and give it that other sense of rhythm. I would also use different types of sticks, such as lightning rods or brushes or even mallets, to give it that slight dynamic change. And I would also use percussion, such as bongos or congas or even cowbells. I would also make use of a whole drum kit. So for example, doing the drum solo, if I was to create another drum solo, I would actually use the whole drum kit, which means I would be using the ride cymbal, the crash cymbal, the bass drum, the high tom or mid tom, and also the hi-hat as well. So on the actual day of the performance, there were a few mistakes, but it would have been a lot harder to play if I didn't decide to actually simplify any of the parts. Overall, though, I felt that it was a very good performance, and I feel that my classmates delivered what I needed to be played. So yeah, overall I felt that it was a very good performance. I've been Alex Wellock, student number 130682237, and this was my wire choir ensemble performance presentation. Thank you very much.